So yesterday, I was driving across the Golden Gate Bridge, marveling at the incredible gift that we have of just driving over the Golden Gate Bridge. People come from all over the country, all over the world, to pay $10 and to drive over the Golden Gate Bridge. But it's something we can do every day, this incredible miracle, this place that we live. And someone, it seemed, as I was driving the Golden Gate Bridge, someone or everybody seemed to be texting me as I was driving over the Golden Gate Bridge yesterday, disturbing my 3 minutes and 1.7 miles of sheer awe and pleasure. The water, the cables, the boats, the sky, the reddish blue towers in front of me. My windows were down, the wind was blowing. Now, I knew that there was an earthquake before I got onto the Golden Gate Bridge. But it wasn't until I was halfway across the bridge that I found out that a tsunami was actually possibly coming to the Bay Area. And I realized I had grown up a little bit more since my first earthquake, because actually my sons texted me before my mother yesterday. Are you okay? I'm on the Golden Gate Bridge, I can't text you back. It's not safe. It felt like it was possible tsunami might wipe out the Golden Gate Bridge, the coast, the state, depending on whose text or channel or message you read. It felt like Jewish mothers around the Bay Area had taken over meteorology and all of the news. And I'm Jewish and I'm a mother, but for some weird reason, I just didn't freak out as I thought I would as I was driving across the bridge, hearing that weird alarm and getting so many texts. And I thought, well, what if this is it? Did anybody here ask themselves that day where you were what if this is it? I have no idea if there actually is going to be a tsunami, and what if I'm not safe, or my kids or my parents or somebody I love is actually in harm's way? And people looked up, and then I noticed everybody was glued to their screen. It was shocking, the earthquake, and then this sense that everybody was looking down. And it reminded me, when we sang the Mi Chamocha, of the Midrash that says that the Mi Chamocha, the song that is sung at the other side of the Reed Sea after the sea is split, is that the sea is split, everybody is walking through, and there's two characters, according to the Midrash, that walk through the entire split Reed Sea, and they are looking down. And they're complaining because one of them got new sandals the day before, the other one was getting blisters, and they just kept looking down and saying, "This is terrible, my new sandals I have blisters." And they got out at the other end and they looked up, and people have tambourines and they're singing the Mi Chamocha, and it's like they missed the miracle because they were looking down. And when I was driving through San Francisco, spoiler alert, no tsunami, I made it to the other side of the bridge and I was okay. But when I got to San Francisco, it seemed like everybody was glued to their phones, just looking straight down. Now, how many people were here Tuesday, October 17th in 1989? Look around. So Tuesday, October 17th in 1989 at 5:04 p.m., it was my first earthquake. I had just arrived from the Midwest, and I thought that's what all earthquakes were like. But I did not go back to Chicago. I mean, the pizza was great, but those earthquakes, it was that was incredible. The earth was actually shaking. But I also remember the picture of the Bay Bridge collapsing and going up to my boss's roof and looking out and seeing the marina on fire. I wasn't a rabbi then, I'm a rabbi now. But I wondered what our tradition tells us when we're going through something very tough, when we're plagued by worry or fear, when the path ahead of us doesn't seem certain at all, whether it's a tsunami, an earthquake, whether we ourselves or sick or someone we love is going through a time of great uncertainty. So as soon as I got over the bridge, I texted everybody who had texted me. I said, I spoke to my boss, not Rabbi Bauer, Hashem, and I said, everybody's going to be fine, but just in case, head to the hills and stay there until you're safe. So I wonder what time it is, the right time to come down from a mountain when you're scared. Is there a time that any of us is living in today when there isn't some kind of fear? There's a big difference, though, between living in fear and living with fear. There's a song that's based on the teaching of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. It's Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar me'od v'ha'ikar lo lefached klal. It says, the whole world is a very narrow bridge. The most important thing is not to be afraid, not to live in fear. But what's interesting is that in the original text from his book, it doesn't say lo lefached klal, it says lo lechit pached klal, which doesn't mean just to be afraid, it means not to make yourself afraid, which is very different than just being afraid. Pachad is primal fear, survival fear, fear of something that actually could take your life away. It's a fear that I think has motivated our people to survive. Hitpachdut, on the other hand, seems to be the self-inflicted fear that feels a lot like worry, anxiety, fear of change, of uncertainty, of a world that feels like it might be spinning too fast for us or out of control. Now, as Rabbi Bauer pointed out at the beginning of our service, the way that we express ourselves as Jews, the way that we feel love in the world, even if we can't see it, is we can feel it by action. And I love that, and I love that the theme of Kolenu this year is going to be love, because we need so much of it in our world. But we also need to be aware of the miracles that are around us every day. And I think that being outside yesterday and being fearful about the tsunami or the earthquake is one way, but there are other ways of clearly seeing that there are miracles in this world. And I'll tell you that right before Thanksgiving, I went to Southeast Alaska, where I spent a week, a place I go each summer. And Alaska's a little different in the winter than in the summer. A little different. Now, I'm from Chicago, but that kind of winter is really different. There's raw power and beauty, and I stopped by the side of the Chilkat River where the bald eagles were sitting and perched waiting for a break in the ice, and the salmon appeared every once in a while. And I looked to my right where they were swooping down when a brown bear, a grizzly, like 500-pound bear, not yet in hibernation, lumbered by sniffing for fish in the river. I was very far away from the Bay Bridge, very far away from the Golden Gate Bridge. It seemed so powerful and so incredible. The salmon were still there and the bear. And then yesterday, when I got off of the bridge, and I'll tell you where I went in a minute, the person who was sitting next to me told me that he had also just seen salmon spawning. And I said, that's incredible. Were you? I didn't see you in Alaska. Were you there? And he said, no. I was at Samuel P. Taylor Park in Marin. And I thought to myself, I had gone so far away. I'd gone to Alaska to see the salmon. And this man sitting next to me said, did you know that in the Bay Area you can take public transportation from San Francisco to the edge of Samuel P. Taylor Park, and you can walk in, and in the Lagunitas Creek, you can see salmon spawning. He said that the day before yesterday he was there, and the female salmon were swishing their tails so hard over the gravel that their tails turned white. They lost all of their scales. And it reminded me of the famous words in this week's portion, Vayetze, when Jacob says, he wakes up from this dream where he sees angels going up and down this ladder. And he says, God was in this place, and I did not know it. God was here, and I didn't know it. So I think of the power of nature, and I think about the power of love, and I think about how important it is for us in these times when there's a lot of darkness, for us to celebrate love, celebrate miracles, and celebrate the action where we can feel that. So where was I heading yesterday over the Golden Gate Bridge? I was heading somewhere where a few of you were there with me. I was heading to the 31st annual San Francisco Free Clinic lunch. Our congregants, Doctors Tricia and Richard Gibbs, manifested a miraculous project just down the street from our synagogue 3 decades ago, just down the street, based on the simple human and basic right of health care. 3 decades ago, many, many people in the city didn't have health care, they were uninsured, and they were getting very sick. Fast forward 30 years later, many of the people in the city are uninsured, they don't have health care, and they're getting very sick. Richard and Tricia had an incredible idea, a belief that no one should suffer or die prematurely because they cannot get medical care. And that dream that they had when they graduated from medical school manifested into a miracle, a holy space that's provided free, accessible medical treatment to the uninsured and advances the field of primary care by giving, at this point, probably hundreds and hundreds of doctors experience in the field. Whenever I have visited there, I have felt like our ancestor Jacob. I have felt an immediate sense God is actually in this place right here on California Street, angels walking in and out of rooms, nervous patients, hands and hearts being held gently, and I feel the presence of God in those moments. I know one of our nurse practitioners, Jessica, you've serve on the board. It's an incredible place to walk into where people are just serving and loving and delivering miracles every day. So if you feel like the world is heading in the wrong direction, if you notice there might be some wars and famine, refugees, that the hostages are still not home, when there's earthquakes, there may or may not be a tsunami coming on the coast. Some of our families and neighbors and friends feel especially vulnerable. They feel very scared. You can sense there's a lot of anxiety. And still, there's a bridge, a ladder. There's a reminder for us to be here right now in this beautiful sanctuary with our beautiful music. There's the power of nature. We have each other. And each week, especially when it's been a hard one, every single week, we have the gift of Shabbat. We get a respite for a moment. We have the opportunity to show up in the space of the holy, of the divine presence for 25 hours, which gives us time to be a little less afraid, a little less anxious, a little less worried, because we can say blessings, we can be blessed, and we can actually be a blessing. So I'm going to ask you in the next 25 hours, who are you going to bless? How are you going to be a blessing? And who are you going to turn to bless you? If you're thinking about somebody right now, maybe they're right next to you, maybe they're far away, I want you to make sure that you reach out to them tonight or tomorrow and tell them about the way you love them or the way they love you. Shabbat shalom.